welcome to BookNerds, a book club for doctor entrepreneurs, the podcast where we dive into the best books for leadership, business, and personal growth, tailored to help doctors and practice owners build thriving practices and meaningful careers. I'm Kyle Klute, joined by my fellow co-hosts and esteemed colleagues, Dr. Brianna Rhue and Dr. Aaron Werner. Together, we're not just doctors, we're passionate entrepreneurs who believe that the right book at the right time can transform your practice and your life. Each month, we'll break down a book that inspires us, challenge each other with new ideas, and share actionable insights you can use to lead better, work smarter, and live well. So grab a cup of coffee, get comfortable, and let's nerd out together, right? So Aaron, I'll let you take it from here. Let's introduce our guest in our book.
Absolutely. So we started this, for those who don't know, we started this last year when Brianna, a year ago, joined the Aaron Werner podcast, introduced a book that has since changed my life. It changed her life. And Kyle heard that episode and said we need to do a book club on it. And so an idea turned into now a tight friendship that we'll actually get to meet in person in a couple of weeks. And in this monthly BookNerds book club. So happy to be here. Trevor was an early listener and engager. Is that a word? Early individual who engaged and shared ideas and commented back and forth. And we said, Trevor, we work with you a ton with TEEM, the virtual team member organization, and Mariana actually works with me, and she's been on the podcast. But Trevor said had some really good book recommendations, and we said, why don't you come on and join us and help to lead this discussion? So Trevor, I will be honest. I'm gonna let you introduce the book, but I'm gonna be honest. When you first said it, I wasn't expecting what we got. I was expecting this to almost be a throwaway book, right? Because I didn't know the author, I wasn't familiar. We're honest here. And what I mean by that is I've read enough, like Navy SEAL, go jump in ice baths and swim in freezing waters and, carry 200 pounds in your backpack up a mountain. I was kind of expecting the book to be like that based on the title. And it was absolutely not. So thank you very much. It was a very, very, very pleasant surprise. So tell us what we're reading and talking about today.
Yeah. So were you having that impression because you know me as like the Navy SEAL type? Because that makes sense. No. The book that we read was The Obstacle is the Way. And the reason I chose this book, honestly, partially is just knowing you a little bit, Aaron. We've had some conversations, and you brought up one time about your neighbor's house was on fire, and you just were in a calm headspace and just were like, I'm just going to take some action here. It wasn't any emotional thing. It was like, I'm just going to go and do this. And I thought, that's a stoic. That guy right there is a stoic. So my dad is actually a philosophy professor. And so I grew up attempting to read philosophy. And so I would get, Descartes and Plato and try to read it, and it just didn't make any sense to me, right? So he gave me Epictetus, which is the Enchiridion, the handbook, which is a Stoic philosopher. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can understand this, right? Like, it makes sense to me. It's like a cool way to live. And then Ryan Holiday came out with this book, and he implements business practices, which I'm a better business person than I am a philosopher. And so it just was a great book for me. It's one I've read a couple of times. It really introduced me to Ryan Holiday. He's a really interesting person, I thought. He was the CMO of American Apparel. He actually was Robert Greene's research assistant for a long time when he wrote like the 48 Laws of Power and stuff like that. So he comes with this like really interesting wealth of knowledge, but a lot of people know him now as the Daily Stoic, right? He has these Stoic phrases, and he goes out and he talks a lot about Stoicism. And I think Stoicism has a lot of great things that that we could take away. And I think that we all got some of that as we were reading the book.
Yeah, we're definitely all Stoics. I've been following Ryan Holiday for quite some time. He also has another podcast that he does daily called The Daily Dad, which if you are on there, it's just quick little nuggets that you can take away. But for our listeners, what Stoicism is, it's not a religion. It's just it's a way of practice. And so there's many Stoics that you don't even know that were Stoics. So like George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, and like the list goes on of people that have looked to the past to understand the present and the future. And so what you do with Stoicism is the quick definition, I looked it up before we got on here, is focusing on what you can control, accepting what you cannot, living virtuously through the 4 cardinal virtues, which is wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance, practicing negative visualization and considering the impermanence of life, which is memento mori. And so that, I think, will jump us into the book, which is, will you be blocked by the obstacles, or are you going to advance through them, over them, maybe stay still, go backwards, under, over, like we've all done that on this call. So I'm excited to kind of jump in and see what we each took away.
Absolutely. Well, this to me came to light, and I actually did a quick 10-minute podcast last Friday. I was in Denver. We had a large meeting there, and we, with the F3 group, with Chris, we had gone running and worked out on Friday morning. Wanted to do it again Saturday because it was beautiful. It was snow. Southern California kid, we don't get this, right? It was not the sticky snow. It was like fluffy, powdery snow. And so we were just running, talking, creating courses and challenging each other. We were about a mile out, turned to come back, and the snow had covered the sidewalk, so I missed the edge of the sidewalk and rolled my ankle, ended up getting an aversion fracture. And so I've got a pretty cool little brace on. The group that was with me, supported me, and we kind of hobbled back. And a great way to ice your foot is just drag it through the snow. So it was frozen by the time I got back. But what was interesting is that the experience coming back after that happened, beyond the pain, we had some really good conversations. We had some really neat, I got to know these guys differently than I would have before, because you can't talk when you're working out at the level that we were talking. And when I got back and people heard, of course I got I'm so sorry that happened, or that's what you get for working out. And it was all very negative, victim type of comments. And in my mind, I never went there. I mean, it hurt, and it's a bummer right now, but I got a really cool experience in conversations with the guys there. My first thought was, this is a cool opportunity. They get to help me, right? Because we live to help each other. It's really hard for me to accept help. And so it was a good opportunity for me to practice letting others do something I can't do, or I can't do very well. But just the conversation. So I was laughing during that and reflecting on that moment, because it felt to me like the book really wanted to solidify its message by making me roll my ankle.
I think, too, a big message to kick this off, too, is it's a formula for thriving, not just in spite of whatever happened, but because of it. And you all have, if we just reflect back on our lives, we all have those moments, right, where you can keep going, you can stop, you can pick yourself back up, and building our practices and our companies and all that we do. It's what makes you who you are. And you either can fall asleep at the wheel. So one of the quotes in the book, he says, a life that is cushioned falls asleep.
Ooh.
And we'll probably get to that later on here. But that's, again, why we're so passionate as both doctors and all of us as business owners, right? We have a great profession, and we're seeing so much of it fall asleep, so much of it slip through our fingertips by not doing the work that we need to as leaders, which is why here's this podcast.
Yep. The Myopia Collective. Cooper Vision and the AOA have partnered in a groundbreaking initiative to change the way optometrists in the U.S. treat children with myopia. The purpose of the Myopia Collective is to rally the profession of optometry and its allies to interrupt the status quo and elevate the new standard of care for children with myopia. Every individual is encouraged to become a member of the collective. By joining, you commit to taking action to help slow the progression of myopia in children. You'll receive updates and information about the collective and its work in the fight against myopia, gain access to educational opportunities and resources offered by the collective, and hear from change agents, the ambassador optometrists selected to serve as advocates for community and policy change that facilitates the mission of the collective. Scan the QR code or click on the link in the show notes to join the collective today. In the past, our focus revolved around prescribing MacuHealth or MacuHealth Plus to patients at risk of macular degeneration, while also recommending it to collegiate and professional athletes for enhanced contrast sensitivity in sports performance. However, this year's introduction of the Life Meter has been a game changer. The Life Meter revealed a concerning truth. Many of my patients have alarmingly low skin carotenoid levels, indicating potential deficiencies in essential body tissues like the retina and brain. Supported by over 30 peer-reviewed publications, Life Meter's accuracy, consistency, and effectiveness has been demonstrated across 2,000 subjects with diverse backgrounds. With this newfound insight, I can now have meaningful conversations about carotenoid levels with all of my patients, even those who may seem outwardly healthy. To learn more about this empowering technology, feel free to contact your MacuHealth representative or click on the link in the show notes. Together, let's optimize patient care and elevate their well-being.
Yeah,
What was your
absolutely.
initial takeaway?
I read this about 10, I think 9 or 10 years ago, maybe less than that. And I didn't have the same thought as you did, Aaron, about like, oh, this is another, Goggins type book. But I thought of it as like my first impression was like, oh, I read that and it was okay. I remember kind of liking it. And I also read Holiday's Ego is the Enemy. And I thought that was really good as well. But actually, I feel like this time through was way more, relatable or more pertaining to my current life right now. Maybe I wasn't, 10 years ago when I just graduated optometry school, finished my residency, first year of practice. I was not in any sort of like leadership, ownership position, which when you look back on that, it was kind of like the good life, kind of not that, ownership is hard, but leadership is hard, right? So I don't know if I had encountered the significant obstacles and felt the significant stress that I would say I do day in and day out today. So I felt like it was much more relatable this time through. I texted you this last night. I don't have the written version of the new updated edition, but his reflections on 10 years, I considered buying that just for that section. I have it on Audible, but it's worth like rereading almost yearly because he talks about how he wrote the book, but then in his reflections, he talks about going back and he reflects on all the things that happened in those 10 years since writing the book, from the pandemic to things happening to his own family farm, to family issues, to almost losing his bookstore, and just realizing how impactful having the mindset of stoicism has helped him through that. And he uses the quote, I just loved the quote. It was something like it's essentially how to turn adversity into advantages. And that's probably the quote that sticks with me the most is it sums up it all so well, as how do you turn adversity into an advantage, where it's seeing the advantages within the adversity. And so that was my big takeaway of just, it was super helpful for me now because, like I said, I'm in a different position, in life, and different obstacles that I face every day. And I'm interested to hear too from you, Aaron, like what was it that about the book that didn't feel so Goggins can't hurt me type diatribe?
Yeah. I'm not in the military, never was, but I went down the path of I'm going to do hard physical things. I've run multiple Ironmans. I used to run half marathons for fun, right? Marathons were training runs for larger events. I've done plenty of of Spartan races and just, strong feats, right? And quite frankly, if we're going to be honest, I did those because 21 years ago I lost my brother, and that was how I lost all emotion but pain was where I could feel. And so I would push hard because then I would feel alive because I had that pain. Looking back, I remember how silly this sounds, but at the time, in my mind, and I think I verbalized it multiple times, is so when somebody says, "How far are you going to run?" I said, "I don't know, because my run doesn't start until it hurts." So I would run until it hurts, and then I would run more because then I would feel alive in that pain, right? And so the physical thing, I think that's the Goggins kind of mentality, is just the physical stuff. Where this was very different, it's that mental toughness, that mental strength. And the one single quote that stood out for me in this book is, it says, "Choose not to be harmed and you won't be harmed. Don't feel harmed and you haven't been. The obstacle in the path becomes the path, and never forget, within every obstacle is an opportunity to improve our condition." And when I read that passage, and the rest of that day and the next couple of days, it stuck with me, and I realized how quick I was and others around me to be the victim, and choosing to be the victim, right? Whether it's in work and, Costco steals my patients, Warby Parker steals my patients, 1-800 takes my patients away, right? I'm a victim there. Or, the idiot cut me off, or the person, we all know you're supposed to run through a yellow light as fast as you can so 5 more cars can go, but one person decided to stop, which held us all back, right? Now I'm late because of them, right? Everything happened to me, and I was choosing to be a victim. And for some people that I had talked to about it was a bitter pill to swallow, because we wanted to defend how I couldn't have done anything. Or on the flip side, just simply choosing not to be harmed got rid of the whole cascade of events and really opened up opportunities. So going back to work, what can I learn from Warby Parker? Because those dudes are smart. So I don't want, and it helps me up my game. I don't want to go watch a big soccer fan. I don't want to watch a soccer game that they win 5-0. I want that game that's coming down to the wire, because it's going to elevate both teams to play their best. So Warby Parker now challenges me to be better, to challenge me to look at what we do in the office, to say, how can I step up my game, right? Because they've stepped up, they've made me do so. So that for me was that kind of that mental in my head, in my heart. How do I look at things differently so that I'm in control?
I think it's funny when I think about that statement of control what you can control. I would imagine that the vast majority of football coaches are stoics without knowing it, or just like coaches in general. Like, you hear them say that over and over. When you hear, if you're a college football fan, Urban Meyer, or I've heard him say stuff about control what you can control. I hear it from my favorite team, the Huskers, with Matt Rhule. He says it all the time. So it's just kind of funny how these little phrases have really infiltrated a lot of our cultural speak about leadership, about productivity, and just about overall wellness and success. It's pretty cool how that is a lot of the foundation of a lot of those things.
Yeah, even Nick Saban in the book, he talks about the 7 seconds. So every play lasts about 7 seconds. And so he just gets them focused on 7 seconds. But Aaron, what you were saying too, that part of the book where it says focus your energy on solving problems rather than reacting to them, I feel like we've all become really, really reactive. And it's not about taking your piece of the puzzle or the pie. This is about collectively making it bigger. And this industry has a huge opportunity to do that. So one quote that stuck out for me was by Miyamoto Musashi. I'm probably butchering that, but it says, "The perceiving eye is weak. The observing eye is strong. The observing eye sees simply what is there, and the perceiving eye sees more than what is there. Observing sees events clear of distractions, exaggerations, and misperceptions. Perceiving sees the obstacles and the setbacks." And I think that that's what we're constantly doing. And if we reflect back to March of 2020, how many of us came out of that and really were reawakened, right? A lot of us too, where we're still on that. It's such a special thing that we all actually got to go through. And yeah, it was a massive obstacle, but look at what this industry has done. Look how far tech forward we've become. Look how more we're investing in our teams and our people because of that. And it's not again, I think that we look at competition as bad. I look at competition as a really good thing.
Yeah.
And I think that that's an important thing. You just have to keep learning. And so seeing other industries, and we talked about this before, the dental industry and the vet industry and all these industries, we all do the same freaking thing. Patient calls you, wants to see you, they make an appointment, you get them back as fast as you can, you take care of the problem, you check them out. Like what we do, yes, you have a cool coffee machine, or you have a practice that was just redesigned, or you have an amazing four-offer, like whatever makes you special, right? We just all do the same thing. So it's finding out efficiencies, it's finding out how to be effective, and then getting back to that passion. I've just seen so much of that ripped from this industry with the competition and what's coming. And we all know on this call what's coming. Guys,
Oh, yeah.
like, wake up.
Yeah.
Huge opportunity, but don't fall asleep.
I love that you're the person to say passion, Brianna, because there's very few people that reach your passion level. You know, I feel like you have a gift. You know, I feel like that's why you do really well in this. It's contagious. It's so awesome. You did mention 2020. Just going through this again, and Kyle, maybe this is part of what hit you different this time, because for me it hit me a lot different post 2020 going through this book. I think that one book too that got me started off and why I was engaging with you guys so much was that Morgan Housel book that you recommended. Same as Ever. Holy cow, that book was incredible. But it talks about every 10 years there's some giant catastrophe, right? And so the biggest one in recent memory, 2020, and it talks over and over again in this book on how that's the time to take opportunity, right? Like where other people might just be freaking out. They're the ones that are like, my house is on fire and they just can't move. That's the time where things happen. Half of the Fortune 500 companies came from bear markets and recessions, right? Those are the ones that are people that are taking those opportunities when other people are losing their shirts.
Yeah, I think that's an encouragement to read the book for those that haven't read it yet. Is Holiday, I mean, he is a storyteller, and he's got so many unique stories that are within almost every chapter has a different person and a different story to tell, to draw out some sort of concept that, supports the whole thesis of the obstacle is the way. But you're right. You just, when you read through that, you just think, you just realize most all, great things and innovations and advancements and progressions and most all realms come through adversity, right? And come through somebody like not just avoiding the obstacle, which is a lot of our tendencies, mine included, but it's making the obstacle the way, and I think that's the powerful part of the philosophy as well as just the book.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, Kyle, because he talks about how fear is debilitating, and so a lot of us avoid fear, right? Obstacle for me represents the fear. I'm afraid of something bad happening. I'm afraid of potential bad outcomes, and so in avoiding that, we avoid opportunities. We avoid some positives, whether it's a lesson or a financial gain or whatnot. And so the obstacle as the way for me is kind of finding that fear and running into it, right? Not blindly, not stupidly, right? We're not saying go buy a bunch of equipment that you can't afford right now, but let's look at the opportunity. Let's look at the leap to bring on a virtual assistant. How on earth am I going to work with somebody in Brazil that has no idea who I am, and I'm going to look really dumb because I'm unorganized, and they're probably smarter than me. And how are we going to communicate? Instead taking the leap to say, hey, let's figure this out. Right? What's the absolute worst that can happen? And I think he talks about doing pre-mortems. Like let's look for the worst that can happen. And the worst that can happen is I lose a couple $100 because I tried something and it didn't work. Right?
Or you call me cussing me out that it did work so well.
Or I call you cussing you out. Now, let's not say I wasn't cussing you out. I was so excited. I was using juvenile words because I have too many friends in the Navy. And
It's my
by the
favorite
way,
word too, Aaron.
yeah. By the way, when I hurt my ankle, I apologized to the guys I was with. I said I'm sorry. I said a lot of bad words, and they said, "Oh no, you just said one bad word. You just said that one word a lot." And right. So it changed my life because I said, "Hey, let's just try it." Right. This feels different. It feels weird. It feels outside the box. But let's do it. And so looking towards that fear, and then knowing if you've gone through the pre-mortem, what are all the bad things that can happen? When they happen, you're not surprised. And I think he talks about it too. It's that the unexpected bad is what we're afraid of. So if you expect that it could go in a bad way and it happens, you're no longer surprised, and it's not really that big of a deal because you've already walked through it in your head. You've already tried it in your head, and you've already kind of worked through what could happen.
And one thing to tie some of our books together, so Dan Martell, a huge fan of his, he says that fear stands for false evidence appearing real, is what he says fear stands for. And I think, too, it's important to remember, another takeaway was this moment is not your life, but just a moment in your life. And so the ups and downs that come is the more even keel you can take that as both a physician, a business owner, a mom, a wife, a friend, like all the things that you are. It's important to remember that. And one other thing, too, is that energy is an asset and a renewable one.
Yep.
So some really other cool things there. And then he said, too, one other thing, what was it? It's just about standing still. So most people get so paralyzed by not making a decision that's really the fool in all of this, is saying, tomorrow I'll do it, tomorrow when this time is right. And that's where he kind of went into all these things that were started in a recession. They were so focused on what they were doing, they didn't even know what was going on. And so that was really their gift.
Yeah. Can we apply that this is just a moment in time to Yelp reviews too, right? You didn't die because one knucklehead gave you a 2-star review. Like we all give ourselves permission to just say, like, Yelp does not reflect who we are.
No.
Yeah, amen. One of my favorite
the
chapters.
Great Wall of China has a 1-star review.
What was that?
The Great Wall
There
of
you
China
go.
has a 1-star review.
Not gone.
It was too long. Couldn't walk it.
It was just a wall. It was just a
Forget
wall.
that.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
That's so good. One of my favorite chapters, I texted you this, was the chapter on persistence. I'm just going to read a little bit of that. So, because this is just like most of the book, I just need to be constantly prodded with this information because sometimes, you get busy and life gets difficult, right? But the thing standing in your way, this is from Ryan Holiday, page 78, I believe. I forget. Part 2 in the action component of the book. So the thing standing in your way isn't going anywhere. You're not going to outthink it or outcreate it with some world-changing epiphany. That was big for me. You've got to look at it and the people around you who have begun their inevitable course of doubts and excuses and say, as Margaret Thatcher famously did, you turn if you want to, the lady's not for turning. Too many people think that great victories like Grant's, Ulysses S. Grant, he was telling a story about him, and Edison, so Thomas Edison's, came from a flash of insight, that they cracked the problem with pure genius. In fact, it was the slow pressure repeated from many different angles, the elimination of so many other more promising options that slowly and surely churned the solution to the top of the pile. Their genius was a unity of purpose, deafness to doubt, and the desire to stay at it.
I like that.
I don't have a comment on that. I just think it's
You
incredible.
just mic dropping us already,
There
Kyle?
you go.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, in putting that quote in reference, when it talks about how Grant's military move to take all his boats past, they talk about the battle, right? So he took all his boats past the front line, basically, so he had to fight his way back out. And
Right.
right. So talk about commitment, right? We're not gonna. There's no more trying at that point, right? We've looked at our options. We're committing. We understand that it could be a catastrophic result, but we're gonna have an answer one way or another. And the commitment to engage with that surprised everybody and made him successful.
Yeah. What I thought about that too is in these opportunities that come up, like thinking just back on Grant going past Vicksburg, and he's like, I'm burning the boats pretty much, you know. But over and over again in the book, it says when we do those things, like it just makes our mind creative, right? Like we have to problem solve, which gets us into this awesome creative space that, you know, we wouldn't be in any other situation. So just thinking about it being in a business perspective, right? Like when you're taking on something like new, maybe it's myopia management or something like that, right? Like it's just like, I'm doing this, I'm going all in, and I'm going to just make it work. And your creative brain it starts finding solutions.
Yeah, I talked to you in that chapter where, oh, go ahead, Kyle.
No, you got it. Go for it.
Where Thomas Edison's lab caught on fire. It was burning to the ground. And he goes, great, now all the rubbish is gone. We get to start over, yeah. Right? And then one thing, too, in that chapter that you were just talking about, Kyle, it says persistence is attempting to solve a problem until it breaks. Perseverance is the long game. Persistence is an action versus perseverance is a matter of will. So too many people are counting on you not to keep going. Be the cat that lands on its feet no matter what. Far more failures in the world are due to collapse or will than there ever will be from objectively conclusive external events. So I think too, and this, he gives the story in the 1850s. So we think kind of like accountability and productivity has all really gone down as of recent, right? We all talk about our teams and how to make them accountable and more productive and ourselves, and that we can't find good people, right? They're all out there. It just comes down to leaderships. But he said this all started around the 1850s, actually, where they got too comfortable and they were too quick to give up. So again, we all talk about the paperweights in the industry of the early adopters and the late adopters and the laggards in the industry. And, you know, we just have to be faster, more educated at making decisions. And it's okay if you make a bad one, but most likely you won't. But how we have to do that quicker to move the industry forward. So as we're kind of coming up on all the expos and all the events, you know, realize where you sit in that, is that you're the shark. Like everyone's trying to pitch you. Your reps are coming in to pitch you. And what does that make you? It makes you the shark. Like everybody wants to be you, but we're not acting like sharks. We're acting like scared minnows of like shooing everybody away. So I just want to preface it that way, guys. Like you have the world at your fingertips, and we just can do it together.
Hear that,
Amen.
Trevor? We're the sharks.
Amen. I was getting that. So
that's what's in my book. So come by Vision Expo and get my book, guys. So the I Pitch book now live.
Yeah, I like it.
That's right.
It's in both of
Nice.
your mailboxes probably today.
All right.
I'm trying to get them out. I just
Nice.
didn't get them out in time.
I agree. Like basically, when you think about that persistence and perseverance, you were saying and mentioned it too, Trevor, about like, you know, myopia management. If you're going to enter into something new at your practice, my tendency, and it's probably a lot of other optometrists' tendency as well, is to just kind of get an analysis paralysis. And I think that's what's super helpful with the kind of the context of this book. Like you know, part one is about mindset and perception. Part two is about action. And then part three is about will. And when you think about part two of action, that's why persistence and perseverance is so helpful, because you have to stay active. You have to stay doing things, because you can't analyze a problem from the outside of not, you know, it's a lot more difficult to analyze how something's going to be before you actually do it. So it takes the action and the potential for failure, like you're saying, Trevor, like that's when you get into the moment of creativity and all that. But you have to actually take the action. And I've had to learn that for myself because I tend to have a more of a like academic approach to everything. But I have to act on something in order to learn from it. And I'm not going to learn nearly enough that I need to know until I actually make the action or take action in it. Then I have something to analyze. Then I have something to work off of and tweak. And if it's a failure, it's a failure. That's just a learning opportunity.
I have a question for each one of you guys.
Okay.
Are you a ask for forgiveness type of person or ask for permission type of person? Because I think this kind of gets into another part of the book. Aaron, what are you?
Oh, I ask for forgiveness. I don't even ask. I just wait until I get called out.
Trevor?
I tend to ask for forgiveness too.
Kyle?
Way more permission. Ask for permission first. Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm definitely ask for forgiveness kind of person. But in the book, he talks about the banana farms where they had two people, right? And they both wanted this piece of land. And they couldn't, one went like, attorney gangbusters on it, and the other one just paid double for it. So they thought there were two owners. They couldn't find out who the rightful owner was. He just paid double and solved the problem in front of them. And I think in this industry too is a lot of asking. Again, that's how we're taught. We're taught to do no harm. We're taught to not take risks because of patient care. But you have to be ambitious enough to get everything you need. Don't think small. And Kyle, we were talking about this in our little text as I think we're thinking too small, right? Mm-hmm. That make the distinction between the critical and the extra think, but process, not perfection.
I like that. It's interesting how many times we hear, well, that's when somebody tries to do something new, right? Well, that's not how you do it, right? Basically saying that goes against the status quo. And we took a stance in the office that just said, if the answer to whatever, if it comes out of your mouth that, well, this is how we've always done something, it's immediately now time to change it. And but look at every different change in optometry, right? We look at you have to give a copy of the contact lens prescription, and now the glasses prescription. And this is the government coming in, messing up and all sorts of things. Well, you can flip those and say, this is a great opportunity to have a conversation with that patient, right? Now the regulation's forcing me to have a conversation that I might not have otherwise had. And instead of taking a passive role and hoping they buy from me, I have an active role in educating, sharing, pitching, whatever however you look at it. But I think there's always a way to attack it. And to your point, Brianna, like just making decisions is where we get ahead. And they're not always right, but failure's a blessing, right? Failure teaches you just what not to do. Now you got a bunch of other options that you haven't proven are failure yet.
Did you guys catch at the beginning of the book? This one stuck out to me pretty big, is his definition of genius. And I don't remember it verbatim, but it was taking thoughts and making them into a reality, right? And that's a form of what genius is. And so I think that all of us just have so much that's happening inside of our minds, but how much are we actually just making that into reality? How much are we actually putting the action behind it, right? I think that he also says that we're defined by our actions, right? Like we may think that we're the greatest person, but if we're not having any action behind it, those are just the things that we are, is the accumulation of our actions.
Yeah, Trevor, that specific quote, it says, genius is the ability to put into effect what is in your mind. There's no other definition of it, and it's by F. Scott Fitzgerald. So he says, when aiming low means to accept mediocre accomplishment, aiming high creates something extraordinary. So when you believe in the obstacle more over the goal, what do you think's going to happen?
Yep. That's a good
quote. I love that chapter.
So thinking broadly, we always like to kind of think, of course, we're talking about the industry, but, pontificate if we can. What are if you were to think about some of the biggest obstacles that we face right now, obviously we could list them out. There's a lot of them out there in our industry, and there always will be, right? So the silly thing is to think that we're going to get into some like new horizon where nothing is ever hard and there's no problems to solve, right? It's just like we have to show up every day and just solve problems. That's our job. But what do you think? Like, I'm interested to hear your perspective on it. All of you is what are some obstacles that you think are the way? Like what obstacles do we see in the industry that should not be avoided, should not be feared, but actually need to be, we need to use this, Stoic philosophy and say, hey, that's actually the way we need to go. Any ideas come to mind for that?
I'll jump in. I think that with the vast amounts of knowledge and automation that we have, I think that the obstacle of I don't have to be the data collector anymore, right? I can look at things. So I haven't put a soft contact lens on an eyeball in 5 years, right? Except for my 13-year-old daughter, who gets frustrated in the morning and I have to do it for her. But I've got a great trained team of techs that are NCLE certified that do all that work for me, right? And do the work for the patient. So I can move on to focusing on other opportunities so that we can take better care of the patients. I'm in the process of trying to take anything that doesn't physically require a person to be in the office and move them to a virtual team member, because why have more bodies than I need to, right? Let's try to find some efficiencies and have the virtual team members call patients ahead of time to get chief complaints and run case histories so that the chart's already started and partway done before we get to before the patient comes in, so we can maximize efficiencies and we can be better prepared for them. So I think the looking at the obstacle of, well, reimbursement hasn't gone up and now I've got to go faster and like they just don't value me, is focusing on the problem, but realizing that now there's an opportunity where I can be more efficient. Patients want better care and want to be more efficient. I can provide that now. And in the long run, I'm making more money because I'm taking better care of more people. Changing that fork in the road and going towards the little bit tougher, but at the ultimate outcome where it's everybody wins.
Yeah. And mine is like selfish. Like I was part of the board in Florida when that FTC rule was coming. And I read the rule really closely, and I was like, well, this is cool. We can send it digitally. Well, my EMR is not going to be able to do that. So how hard could it be to build a tech company? Oh, my God. Talk about obstacles, like just money stolen, all the things that, like, we just kept getting up. And, we've had cartoon characters made out of us. We've had, I could write a book on this shit. But
Well, you did.
Yeah,
I did.
That sounds interesting. Are the cartoon characters in there?
Oh, God.
Where do we have to go to see the cartoon characters?
She's still out there.
Is that BookNerds After Hours? That's over a cocktail discussion.
That's an after hours cocktail discussion.
Sorry.
And so that part of that is again, taking this to your advantage. Like, everybody wants what we have, which is the prescription. We're the originators of the prescription. And so if you just stop printing it and send it to them digitally inside your store, like, everybody wins. So it's flipping all these things 180 and seeing it from a different perspective, because we just legislate ourselves out of this too quickly by not understanding the business case or the use case. And so what Aaron was saying too is it's really questioning everything. Do I have to do it that way? Is there a better way to do it? Is it more effective, more efficient? So how we doubled our practice wasn't by more people, because that old saying in the industry is you need, for every $150,000, remember this quote? Yeah. Every $150,000 that you do, you need a team member. Oh, do you know how many team members we would be if that was the stat to this day?
Yeah.
Where would we put them all? And so it just is about investing in automation. What your team should be doing, and what they shouldn't be doing, you need to leverage that. And put up with the bumps in the road, guys. Like, it's tech. Like,
Love it.
Trevor's free.
What about you, Trevor?
So I definitely see the industries through a specific lens, right? I go and I was at a Vision Source meeting last night where I speak on staffing, but it was cool to kind of take myself out of the room for a little bit as I was cleaning up, just to see the people there talking about staffing is, a pretty big issue. It is an obstacle that a lot of offices face. I mean, I've been working in healthcare as a vendor for quite a while now, and it's just incredible what you guys go through to your specialists and these experts and these badasses that just such cool things, in healthcare. And then you're also supposed to be this leader. You're also supposed to be this business owner. You're supposed to do all of these things that you weren't trained for, right? And so there's lots of great resources out there, but it still seems like that is a pretty big obstacle. And staffing is something that, it just takes that leader. It takes that person to really kind of understand people a little bit more. And so I hear a lot of staffing issues. And so I see that over and over again. And that's something that, we're trying to solve here at TEEM. And I just going through this book again, it kind of just reaffirmed, like going back to 2020, right? Like we had to pivot to remote workers. We saw that they could be efficient and effective. And we sought out, well, if we can hire people just around the world that are really great too, like why not? So just making sure that we pivoted and we're maybe able to find really good things. But I still think that staffing is an issue that I hear about and I see quite a bit. I know that when I do go out and speak, there's the big survey that was done by Envision Magazine, right? And they just listed all of the issues that practice managers and doctors are seeing, and staffing is always at the top of the list. So I think that you guys get it and you guys understand it, but being that leader and taking control of your office and making sure that things are getting done is something that I see. Again, very specific lens here, Kyle, and I know you guys have a much broader scope of the industry, but that's just what I see.
No, Trevor, I think it's a great point because, it's the impetus for this podcast and us reading the books that we do, right? Like, I'm not going back to school to do an MBA. So what do? I just listen to as many podcasts as I possibly can on management and leadership and productivity and read as many books as I can. And then when you find like-minded optometrists who want to grow and expand and accomplish like you do, it's pretty awesome. That's the joy of this group on this podcast. So, but I would say for me it would be the obstacle, and this is what's interesting. I'm hearing each one of you. The work you're doing is the obstacle. Like you've identified an obstacle, and the work you're doing is essentially making the obstacle the way of your work. Which is really interesting. And it's the same for me too. Like the main obstacle that like Chris Wolf and I are working on is we see the biggest obstacle is the tension between vision insurance and medical insurance in primary care practice. And so that's why we've developed the comprehensive optometry simplified framework to help. Like, we don't think the answer is to either specialize. You can if you want, but we don't think broadly the answer is to specialize or just to purely get rid of all your vision plans. We think, no, the obstacle actually is the way. Like, let's figure out how to actually live in the tension. And here's a framework to actually use the obstacle for the benefit of your practice. Because frankly, like where I practice in West Omaha, most everybody has really good jobs and they have vision care plans and they've got all the, so it'd be silly for me to drop all those. That's how I get my new patients, and I know there's arguments for and against that, but that's where I was thinking this morning of like, okay, that's interesting. And I bet you each one of us, like, that's what we're probably most passionate about right now is we're trying to like overcome, or we're trying to go through the obstacle. because that's the way. So it's pretty cool to hear that from you all.
What got me thinking, Trevor, when you were talking about staff and a little bit on the sports analogies in the book, is one of the hardest things I think that coaches do is give the halftime talk to a losing team. Because if you are going in at halftime, and again, I'm thinking soccer where you don't have time to pull your players in between plays and whatnot, right? You've got a finite amount of time, and you want to tell them how much they're sucking and how much they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, and you want to berate them, but they still have to go back out and play for 45 more minutes. So how do you live in the moment? How do you recognize what's there? You've been playing poorly, right? But then pivot on that to say, hey, this is where we stand right now. We're losing 3-0, right? And that's a pretty big deficit in soccer. So we have to change around. Individually you have to change, as a team you have to change, and then you have to do what's a very difficult task of scoring 3 goals just to tie this game in a half. And so I think that's it got me thinking, it's kind of like you said earlier, that all coaches are stoics, right? Because how do you live in that moment? How do you find the opportunity, not cherry or sugarcoat it, but address it properly? And it made me think that I probably need to do a better job of talking with my team when we don't have the good days or the good weeks or the good months that we want to, right? Because it's easy to either play the victim or to come down on somebody for not doing their job, but then how do you rally them back and put them in the direction they need to go to get the outcomes that we're looking for?
Part of the book he says too, there's a quote where a manager walks in and she says, "The project has failed spectacularly." And so it's going in, understanding that. And it was fun. I was just in Utah at Weave headquarters, right? And really gained a new perspective there on, building a tech company, not, going from high school to college to optometry school to, the highest paid person, my hippo effect in a practice, right? And then now having a tech company and not being in one. And like we've emulated that on a different scale. But I just came away proud of all the setbacks that made us stronger, all the learnings, all the MBAs. I have like 20 of them over on my wall just because it's hard knocks, right? Kyle, so when we talk about MBAs, there's so many letters behind our name that are, made up. My husband makes fun of us because he's an MD, so he only gets 2 letters, and we have like all these other letters behind us. He's like, "You're so dumb." I was like, "I know, okay, I want my letters." But again, we just live in such a spectacular place, and that's part of this bringing us together is get back to your vision, get back to your personal vision. And what we talked about on the last one was we are a team that. Did you guys go do that exercise, Aaron? I loved how you said that. We are a team who runs on time. We are a team who takes care of ourselves so we can take care of others. Like, I actually had them do the exercise when I wasn't there to see what they said, and it actually came out really, really cool. So we just made it, we framed it. Now it's on our wall.
That's awesome.
And away we go into 2025.
Thank you, James Clear, Atomic Habits.
Yeah.
Right.
It's so I like the shift in mindset. What so Brianna, I'm curious because you work obviously you own a practice, but then in your doctor contact lens role, and you guys are working on offices. I would think that you're helping offices. I would think that you're coming across obstacles, both real and perceived by the practices that are coming in, right? And hopefully mine was not one of them. I delegated the onboarding to the team. But what are some of the most frustrating perceived obstacles that you come across when you're working with an office that wants to engage with Dr. Contact Lens? And I mean by perceived because I think they're probably not really there. We just think they're there.
Yeah.
We think the negative's going to happen.
Yeah, what I see is I can tell right off the bat when an office is going to be successful or not. Really, really quickly. And it comes down to leadership where the doctor will go in and say, "Guys, I found this solution. Hey, check it out. What do you think? We're going to do this." And they have veto power. Then you have the ones where you're like, no, I see that, I got to make money. I got to take care of my patients, and we got to get over these little humps. Then you have the offices where they come in just dragging their heels, kicking and screaming, where this is the way it's always been done, not looking at something for what it all the way is. So they're already poking holes into why it's not going to work versus seeing the reasons why it is going to work. And then the doctors will give up too quickly because they don't want their staff to revolt. So in one instance, I had an office. They had done $615,000 in patient-generated orders in 1 year. Came time for their renewal. They didn't renew. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? Yeah. And they said, I can't get my staff to do it anymore. We had 2 orders that messed up, and we're not going to do it anymore. But my patients are going to still call me. So it's just silly things like that where it's like you did the heavy lifting to get everything rolling, and then we're so quick to not see the snowball effect take place for anything. So that's, again, the differentiation, I think, in leadership, in realizing that, yeah, a business needs money, a business needs fuel to run, and the world is changing at a rapid pace. So you can either be part of it, or you can still think patients want to come back and pick up their contacts. They don't. So that's kind of where I'm seeing, again, I can tell if you're going to be successful or not right off the bat after that first training.
That's interesting. So, Trevor, what do you guys see when an office is looking to engage their first, I like the phrase virtual team member more than virtual assistant, right? Because they're part of your team.
Right.
But when they're looking to bring on and engage with a virtual team member, what perceived obstacles do you find that you guys butt up against too often?
Yeah, it just seems like they want that silver bullet. They want that team member to come in and to know everything and just to take all of their burdens away, right? And we love working with the offices that they come to us and we know that they're going to have to get used to our procedures and everything that's unique for our office, where they've seen it and they've talked to somebody that's been successful. Those are usually the best ones. So whenever you guys send over people, Aaron, Brianna, or Kyle, those ones are usually pretty good because you guys have kind of prepped them. You're like, this is what's been successful for a virtual assistant or virtual team member, trademark Aaron Werner. Is that what we're doing, right? So,
you know where to send the royalties.
When they just understand that it's going to take a process, and yeah, they're rock stars, but it's going to take a couple of minutes. It's going to take that training, and so we again, like Brianna said, we kind of know those that are coming into it where they're like, oh, I have all of these problems, and this person's just going to solve it right away. We know that's not the best situation.
Well, I will tell you, you had one silver bullet, and I got her, Mariana. Her problem was she did not get a silver bullet. She did not get a silver bullet in me.
There's more. Mariana is amazing. She is so cool. Sorry, just to take this off. But there's other ones too. Just if anybody's looking for a remote employee or whatever Aaron said, that
virtual
type of person,
team member. Yep.
The virtual team member.
And I think too, this gives you a time to slow down, to speed up. We're so quick.
Yes.
On to the next, on to the next, on to the next. So in our practice, our new term is every patient, every encounter, every time.
Ooh.
So it's so quick to be like, okay, that script walk, that script walk, that script walk. Plug these leaky buckets, just like
Write
Kyle.
that down.
Okay, I gave another gift card because somebody didn't want me to charge their medical copay over this one. So we're just very conscious now of all the gift cards we're giving out. We charged a 99213 instead of a 99214. So there's just so much opportunity in what you're doing. And just stop with the on to the next. That's exhausting. No wonder we're all exhausted.
Yes.
That's part of it. So that's Trevor's team, all the things that you get to invest in. It just slow down to speed up.
Yes, and we're putting into play the principles of the Comprehensive Optometry Simplified, the pillars, right? So instead of having goals, like I told you guys this year, we're going to go back. We're looking at all of our systems, and it's amazing what happens when you start knocking them down, because they were kind of built like a house of cards, right? And it wasn't bad, and it worked, but it could have been built a lot better. We just didn't have the full infrastructure. We built as we went, because we want that instant gratification. We want to solve the solution now. One person complained, so we have to rebuild the whole thing for the one person who complained, instead of having a very clear structure pillar. So yeah, I like that. I wrote down the every patient, every encounter, every time.
Cool.
So awesome. Well, we're getting close to the end of the hour. Want to respect everybody's time. Last minute kind of takeaways. What if, Kyle, what are you thinking right now?
What am I thinking? I'm excited that we read this book. I'm excited that I got to read it again because, like I said, I think it just reinforces the mindset of solving problems, right? And it helps me personally, and I hope it helps other you all and other optometrists as well. Is just see, problems and obstacles and conflict in the office as just like, hey, that's what I'm here for, and that's my job, and make that obstacle the way that's your challenge for the day. And so, yeah, I'm glad you recommended this, Trevor. It was a great read.
Yeah, that was good. Brianna?
Yeah, mine was I texted you guys this song and you guys all went wild. So it's like, I get knocked down, then I get up again. You're never gonna take me down. So like that's like the whole thing. But really, just anything can be turned into your advantage.
Oh yeah, that was the one song I could dance to in high school. Right?
You guys both went wild.
That was my favorite song in 8th grade.
It's still my favorite song. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Oh. I like your version a little bit better though. Like, when's that going to be on Spotify?
I'm a jingle girl, so I can. One of my things. But just don't be intimidated. Turn anything to an advantage. And I love in the book where he's like, I'm not telling you not to like sulk or not feel the pain or go through some really tough things, but realize there is a way out, and you can do that faster in some cases, slower in some cases, but really it's just putting one foot in front of the other.
Yeah, I like that. Trevor?
Well, thanks for letting me be here, and I won't take up too much of your time here, but I'm so glad that we were able to go through this book again, and that you're let me pick. I think that it kind of takes off into my other favorite book, which is Man's Search for Meaning, right? Viktor Frankl, he's the ultimate, 20th century Stoic. And what he says is like life has purpose and life has meaning. And when you're just always going towards that purpose, then everything else can kind of fade away, right? And I think that especially, right, like you guys have done so much to put these businesses together, and you've gone to so much schooling to be an awesome optometrist, right? Like that's your purpose. Like really focus on that and just take it baby steps at a time. The other really big Stoic of our century is James Stockdale, and he was in Vietnam in a prisoner of war camp, and he said one thing about the people that didn't succeed and that died in the prisoner of war camps were those that were waiting on Christmas. I'll be fine when Christmas gets here, right? But those that had the mindset of we're going to be fine, but it's going to take time. I just need to get through today. I think that that's a big impact of what this book is, right? Like just take it each individual day, each individual problem, and really find each obstacle throughout the day and celebrate those wins. But thank you so much for letting me be here. This is awesome. I really respect all of you. So thank you so much for letting me do this.
Oh, well, thank you. And thanks for reaching out and suggesting this. I have one quote that I think really, really resonated and kind of pulls everything everybody says together. Is that each time you'll learn something, each time you'll develop strength, wisdom, and perspective, each time a little more of the competition falls away until all that left is you, the best version of you. So the more we just keep hitting it, we keep challenging ourselves, we keep facing the challenge instead of running through it, or running away from it rather. It ultimately that's That's how we get the best us and the best teams and the best practices and all the above.
There's the Aaron Werner mic drop.
Boom. Nice. Love it. So awesome. Kyle, we are going to need to update the intro to add esteemed author to Brianna's.
We will. I will do that.
Now that she's got the,
I'll let
the book.
ChatGPT know.
Yes. And so look forward to this next time, the last Wednesday of every month. I'll put the link in for the BookNerds website so you can follow along with us. We'll be announcing February's book here shortly. And love that the conversations, love the journey throughout the month as we get towards this. And really love kind of the thread that weaves all these books together. It's kind of a neat little BookNerds tapestry, right? How's that for a stoic word?
Good word.
Cool. All right, guys. Well, appreciate it. Thank you very much, everybody who joined us. Appreciate you joining us as well, and look forward to next time.
Thanks for being an engager.
Thank you. See ya.
Hey, if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts and our YouTube channel, both linked in the show notes. Now, here's something exciting. We're giving away a 1-year subscription to Comprehensive Optometry Simplified. All you have to do is leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, take a screenshot, and email it to me at questions@icodeeducation.com. We'll put that in the show notes as well. We'll be selecting a winner on December 15th, so don't miss your chance to get access to this valuable resource. Thanks again for listening. I can't wait to see your reviews.